They labeled my table, Nicole, still living with mom. Like that was supposed to be a joke. I didn't notice it right away. The place was packed. White tablecloths, golf club chandeliers, servers floating around with trays of shrimp skewers and sparkling water. I was just looking for my name, but then I saw it, printed in bold on a cheap little sign taped to a folding chair. Not even a real place card like the others. That's when the laughter started. The host, some silver-haired marketing exec with too much cologne and a wireless mic, pointed it out from the podium. Let's give a warm hand to our award winner Eric and his family, including his cousin Nicole, still living with mom. A ripple of chuckles passed through the crowd. Real, polite country club laughter. One woman actually clapped. Quick note, before we start, how's your day going and where are you joining from? I didn't blink, didn't flinch. I just reached for my water glass and stood up. Maybe you should check your supplier contracts before you crack jokes, I said, loud enough to reach the back of the room. Someone across the room choked on their wine. A few heads turned. The guy with the mic faltered for half a second, but then chuckled like I was proving his point. His smile didn't reach his eyes. Eric, standing at the head table, stopped grinning. Finally, after a whole evening of eating up applause and pretending he built his career alone, his face went still. I sat back down, smoothed out my dress, and crossed my legs. The servers kept moving. The band played some canned jazz. But something shifted. People didn't laugh again after that. Not at me, anyway. 6 months earlier, I was running logistics for R&M Regional. We handled mid-size freight contracts across 6 states. I'd started there boxing up floor fans in the warehouse when I was 22. By 27, I was senior operations manager with a department of 40 under me. No corner office. Just a desk near the break room, but it was mine. People came to me for answers, and they got them fast. That Monday morning, I had just cleared a customs bottleneck for a Kansas delivery and was reviewing inventory data from our Oklahoma hub when the HR rep popped her head in. She had that fake sorry smile they practice in training. Quick check-in, Nicole. I followed her into a glass room. My boss was already there. No coffee, no folders. Just a tablet on the table with a spreadsheet open and the words, transitioned roles. We're restructuring the ops division, he said. Your position is being merged with a corporate compliance function. Merged with who? We're centralizing under corporate. No duplicate leadership needed. Translation? You're out. Quietly. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I took my little severance folder, packed up my things, and walked out while nobody was looking. At home, I opened my laptop and stared at the blinking cursor in a Word doc labeled Nicole Resume, 2025 Update. I managed to type results-driven logistics professional before I slammed it shut. The next morning, I opened it again and reworded that line 6 times before deleting the whole paragraph. I wasn't just out of a job, I felt gutted, like someone had walked in and shut off the lights. I kept thinking Eric would call, or text, something. For 5 years, I'd been his free backstage pass into the logistics world. Every time he ran into a freight problem at Veridian, I was the one he called. Hey, Nick, is there a way to reroute sea containers faster from Savannah? Nick, you ever worked with Blue Line brokers? Are they shady? I'd helped him tweak his first RFP for bulk routes when he was still learning what drayage meant. So yeah, I figured he'd notice when I dropped off the map. Instead, 2 weeks later, I got a white envelope in the mail. Thick paper, raised print. Veridian Freight Annual Awards Banquet in honor of executive strategist Eric McCauley. It wasn't even addressed by hand. No note. No +1, just my name, printed alone. I stared at it for a good minute. No call, no check-in, just a seat at his victory lap. At first, I laughed. One sharp, mean laugh. Then I tossed the invite in a kitchen drawer and left it there, next to expired coupons and a dead battery. I didn't touch it again for a week. Don't let them dress you up and hang you in the corner like a coat. I leaned against her kitchen counter, watching her stir pasta like she was mixing cement. It's one night, I said. One night of what? Standing there while he soaks up awards for work you taught him how to do? I didn't answer, mostly because she wasn't wrong, but also because I wasn't even sure why I wanted to go. Curiosity? Anger? Maybe I wanted to look that whole crowd in the eye and let them see I wasn't gone. I hadn't disappeared. She tossed me a dish towel. Wear gray, cold and sharp. I did. That night, I walked through the doors of that golf club ballroom in a gray sheath dress that hugged just enough but didn't try too hard. No sparkles, no bright color, Just clean lines, sharp heels, and a low bun. Not one person greeted me by name. These were people I'd answered late night emails for, people I'd stayed on calls with through broken scanners and lost shipping tags. They all glanced my way, then looked right past me like I was part of the decor. I walked slow, eyes forward. My heels clicked on the tile. That part was intentional. And then I saw it. A table in the back corner near the emergency exit. Mismatched folding chairs, plastic utensils, paper plates. Every other table had centerpieces. This one had a stack of napkins and a tin of mints. The sign was taped to the back of one chair in black Sharpie. Nicole, still living with mom. I didn't move for a second. I just stared. One of the interns, a guy I half recognized from Viridian's support team, leaned toward the woman next to him and whispered, "That's just mean." I stepped forward and pulled out the chair. Let them see. I didn't sit. Not yet. I walked toward the front podium as the room started to settle. The host was still flipping through his note cards, getting ready to launch into his speech. Eric hadn't noticed me yet. He was too busy shaking hands with a CFO I'd flagged 2 years ago for double billing vendor charges. My heels echoed as I crossed the floor. A few heads turned. One woman elbowed her husband. The murmurs started early this time. I stepped up to the podium, looked the host dead in the eye, and smiled. "Need help finding your place cards?" I asked. He blinked. "Excuse me?" "Because if this is your idea of a joke, I hope your freight audits are more original." His face went stiff. I turned toward the crowd and folded my hands calmly, waiting. They didn't know what to do. Polite laughter died in a half second. No one clapped, but I didn't flinch. Let them pretend. Let them all pretend they didn't know who I was. I was still here, still standing, and I hadn't come to disappear. Back home, I kicked off my heels, tossed the dress on the bed, and pulled my old work laptop from the closet. The battery light blinked red. I plugged it in, sat cross-legged on the floor, and waited for the screen to come to life. I hadn't opened that machine since the day I walked out of R&M. It still had sticky notes on the lid, root codes, internal extensions, a half-smeared login for an old port clearance dashboard. My fingers remembered the passwords before my head did. Once I got in, I pulled up my archived reports from our merger assessment with Viridian Freight. This was back when they'd tried to acquire one of our smaller competitors. Deal didn't go through, but I remembered something feeling off. A folder buried deep in the ops archive blinked back at me. Viridian_MA_initial. I opened the spreadsheet and scanned line by line until it hit me. Port fees from international hubs, specifically Singapore and Rotterdam, were too neat, too flat. Tariffs don't work that way. They shift with fuel rates, regional policy, even weather. I opened a blank doc and started building a side-by-side, what they reported and what the real export tariffs were at the time. The discrepancies weren't huge, 500 here, 2,000 there, but they stacked. Month over month, ship after ship. At first, I thought maybe it was just a bad data dump. I cross-checked against the public filings. Viridian's customs declarations were on the light side. That's putting it nicely. Either they had the world's most efficient routing system, or someone was trimming fat in ways that didn't show up on the books. I didn't sleep. I ran on coffee and leftover mac and cheese from Danny's place. By sunrise, I'd pulled down 7 months of export filings, customs paperwork, and freight cost estimates from Viridian's trade partners. Some public, some scraped. I didn't need access. I just needed patterns, and I had them. The overseas shipping fees had been rounded consistently down. Tariffs logged under alternate vendor codes. Some of the customs brokers listed didn't even match their official EINs. Nothing outright illegal. Nothing that screamed fraud at first glance. But to anyone who knew logistics, it smelled like manipulation. Sketchy freight practices 101. Inflate cost centers where internal review is soft. Hide underreported duties inside third-party charges, and let procurement bury the paper trail in monthly summaries. The kicker? A few of the names showing up in the old vendor list were ones Eric had asked me about. Casual stuff, years back. Like, "Hey Nick, you ever dealt with Clearfleet forwarders?" That kind of thing. Clearfleet was all over these docs. That wasn't coincidence. I sat back, cracked my neck, and opened a fresh spreadsheet. Started organizing, by vendor, by country, by cost differential. My hands didn't stop moving. I wasn't planning yet. I was just following the thread. And the deeper I got, the more I saw it. A clean, deliberate pattern of manipulation dressed up like smart cost cutting. I wasn't sure where it would lead, but I knew exactly where to start pulling. By Sunday night, I had everything I needed, enough to raise eyebrows without setting off alarms. I opened a new browser window and navigated to Freight Channel Watch, an industry blog that specialized in what they called deep dives for dirty hands. It wasn't mainstream, but supply chain managers read it. So did junior investors and procurement analysts who knew how to connect dots. Their anonymous tip line was buried in the footer. I attached a folder, stripped of metadata, and wrote one clean paragraph. Multiple freight declarations out of Southeast Asia via Viridian Freight appear inconsistent with regional tariffs and port charges. Suggest cross-referencing with 2024 declared duty filings and Clearfleet vendor logs. See attached. I didn't sign it. I didn't need to. I hit send. Then I sat back and waited. By Monday morning, the blog had posted a 2-paragraph blip under their quiet signals section. No names, just keywords. Underreported freight, Clearfleet forwarders, Viridian, Rotterdam Singapore discrepancies. It hit like kindling. One supply chain subreddit picked it up within the hour. A guy claiming to be a customs broker broke it down in the comments with screenshots from 3 federal export logs. By noon, a thread on a logistics investing forum connected the cost gaps to Viridian's quarterly earnings. That's when I knew it had teeth. Viridian's stock dipped 2.5% by market close. Not a nosedive, but enough to get noticed. And that same watchdog group that tanked Argo Freight back in 2021, they posted a teaser report with the words, "Patterns worth investigating. More to come." I didn't smile, but I felt it. That heat in my chest. The fire was lit. That night, I got an email from an old client I hadn't heard from in 2 years. Gary Kohler, ex-COO of Mid-South Fulfillment. Subject line, "Was this you? Body. Only 3 people I know would catch this. 2 are retired. You available for a short-term contract?" I stared at the screen, then typed back, "Yes." "What's the scope?" By Tuesday afternoon, the paperwork was signed. 6-week compliance audit, mid-5 figures, full remote. I wasn't unemployed anymore. Didn't even need to update my resume. The email came Wednesday morning, buried between a vendor invoice and a Slack ping from Mid-South. Subject, confidential discussion request, Viridian Freight. Sender, Elena Roth. I recognize the name, former DOT regulator, now on Viridian's board of directors. Reputation for being sharp, dry, and lethal in audit meetings. The message was short. "Would you be available for a private call regarding an opportunity for limited duration consulting support? Your discretion is appreciated." No details, no signature fluff. Just a direct line and a time. I called exactly 1 minute after. "Elena Roth. This is Nicole speaking." She didn't waste breath. "We'd like you to come in as an external compliance consultant. Short term. Quiet review of our internal controls. My understanding is you've worked with relevant vendors." I leaned back in my chair. "Does your CEO know you're calling me?" "Number, and he won't, until I decide he needs to." I let that sit. She continued, "You'd operate with board-level authorization, full access to procurement, vendor contracts, and freight documentation. No direct reporting line, no formal employee status. We need someone who can find the weak spots without protecting them." I was quiet for a second, then I asked, "And what brought this on exactly?" "A dip in confidence, meaning their investors got spooked, and now the board wanted answers before the media started asking for them." I tapped my pen against the desk. "One condition? Go ahead. I want full systems access, no babysitting, and I want it in writing that I report to the board only." Done. She didn't even blink. By Friday, my contract was signed. That following Monday, I stepped into Viridian's headquarters. Sleek glass, curated art, coffee stations that tried too hard. I wore a navy blazer, flats, and zero makeup. I wasn't there to impress anyone. Reception waved me through without smiling. My access badge worked on the first swipe. The place was quiet, a little too quiet. I'd barely passed the main conference area when I felt it. Eyes on me. From hallways, open doors, break rooms. Not one hello. Not one nod. Just that stiff silence people use when they don't know if they should be scared or smug. Then I saw him. Eric, coming out of the elevator, cup of coffee in hand, laughing with a junior manager like nothing was wrong. The second he saw me, his face froze. He didn't stop walking. Didn't say a word, just kept moving like I was invisible. I stood in his path. "Morning," I said. He slowed just enough to register me. Didn't know you were consulting here. You do now. He tried to smile. It cracked halfway. Small world. Not really, I said. Just a short memory. His eyes twitched. Guess I'll see you around. I stepped aside. You will. He walked off, paced slightly faster, coffee hand a little less steady. I headed to the room they'd cleared for me on the third floor. Bare desk, 2 monitors, login packet waiting. Within an hour, I had system access. Vendor contracts, purchase orders, customs declarations, all of it. Around lunchtime, I got pinged by Elena's assistant. Also, FYI, there's board chatter about elevating Eric to a senior strategy role. Might be useful context. I didn't respond. I just opened a fresh spreadsheet, cracked my knuckles, and got to work. The deeper I dug, the uglier it got. I started with shipment manifests, real simple. Dates, port codes, volumes, vendor tags. Then I lined them up next to procurement logs, customs filings, and third-party invoices. Some were watermarked PDFs scanned sideways. Some were just Slack threads pasted into spreadsheets. I didn't care. I printed everything. By the end of week 1, my desk looked like a crime scene. The patterns were subtle, but not invisible. Freight routes were inflated by 20 to 30% on paper compared to what was actually delivered. Same shipments listed twice under different vendor codes. Charges routed through shell forwarding companies that had no street address. Just a P.O. box and a Gmail. And every time I found a charge that didn't make sense, someone higher up had signed off on it. Not formally, no initials, but always copied, always included, always watching. Eric was in every damn thread. He never flagged anything, never pushed back. Just polite thumbs-up reactions or one-liners like, looks good or thanks for the update. The kind of guy who stood next to the fire but never picked up the match. I traced one contract with a Malaysian broker that billed Viridian twice in Q4 for the same container route. Cost difference? $46,000. Paid out. No questions. Eric had replied, approved per policy. There was no policy. Next, I filtered Slack logs by keywords. Adjustment, rebill, forecast shift, customs smoothing. They weren't even hiding it. One director joked about hiding the vegetables under the mashed potatoes when referring to bloated costs pushed through end-of-year invoicing. Everyone laughed. Eric included a laugh emoji. That's when I started digging into internal planning folders, budget forecasts, comms drafts, PR frameworks. Most of them were boring fluff, until I found a file labeled Scenario C, Media Leak Containment Draft 02.x. It read like a battle plan. If irregularities surfaced, Viridian would proactively announce leadership review, address historical misalignments, and recommit to transparency. Guess whose name appeared 3 times in the draft? Eric McCauley, proposed voice of reform. It was all laid out. If things blew up, he'd be pushed forward as the fresh face of integrity, the guy who would overhaul outdated compliance methods and drive the next phase of operational transparency. I leaned back, letting it all land. They weren't protecting him, they were positioning him. If this thing detonated, he'd be the PR shield. He'd take the hits, give the press their quote, and quietly disappear when the board was done with him. All his loyalty, all his silence, it wasn't going to save him. They were just keeping his hands clean long enough to throw him under the bus with both shoes still on. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with a legal pad and a glass of warm bourbon. I started writing names, vendors, directors, finance VPs, asterisks next to the ones with signing power. I wrote Eric's name last. Then I stared at it for a long time. He didn't build the scam. He didn't run the numbers. He didn't even cash the biggest bonuses. But he was there, every step, quiet, agreeable, useful, the kind of silence that gets people hurt. I thought about the job he almost had, the office being whispered about, the board grooming him for a bigger role because he was easy to work with and hard to pin down. I could leave him out of the final report. Say he didn't know. Pretend his involvement was peripheral, or I could write it all down. Every message, every approval, every cowardly, looks good. He'd fall with the rest of them. No more corner office, no second act. I poured another inch of bourbon and kept writing. The email hit my inbox just after midnight. No subject line, no signature, just one sentence. Think twice before submitting that report. I stared at it for a full minute. The sender's address was a throwaway, jumbled characters from some offshore domain. I flagged it, took screenshots, and forwarded it to my encrypted archive. Then I powered off my laptop and went to bed with the lights still on. The next morning, I walked out to my car and stopped cold. A printed screenshot was tucked under my windshield wiper, page 4 of my draft report. The section outlining inflated freight costs linked to vendor code cross-swapping. Whoever left it had walked right up to my car in broad daylight. That hit different. At the office, I went straight to the boardroom and handed it to Elena without a word. She didn't blink, just glanced at the page, then handed it back. Good. That means they're scared. Someone's watching my files, I said. They're watching because they can't control you. Finish it. I nodded once and walked out. I didn't need her approval. I already knew what I had to do. But hearing her say it out loud slammed the door on any doubt I had left. Back in my workroom, I finalized the report. 98 pages, hard data, screen captures, email threads, Slack logs, payout schedules, vendor trails, everything backed, sourced, and organized. Eric's name appeared 42 times. I encrypted the final file and sent it to a compliance lawyer I'd worked with at Mid-South. Whistleblower protections triggered automatically under federal shipping statutes. Within the hour, I had a certified timestamp, a traceable trail, and legal cover that couldn't be buried inside Viridian's firewall. I saved a backup to a private drive and locked it in my glove box. 2 days later, I got a calendar invite. No subject. Just cafe downstairs. 4:15, I knew who it was. Eric was already sitting at the corner table when I got there, eyes sunken like he hadn't slept. He stood when he saw me. Nicole, thanks for coming. I didn't accept. I just showed up. He sat down slowly. No coffee in front of him, no laptop, just shaking hands and a tight jaw. I know what you're doing, he said, and I get it. I do. Please, don't destroy me. You destroyed yourself. I just documented it. I didn't run the scheme. I wasn't the one pulling the strings. No, you just nodded along for 5 years while it happened in your inbox. He looked away. They'll use me as a scapegoat. You know that. I leaned in. I read the PR draft, Eric. You're already the scapegoat. His face dropped. This isn't revenge, I said. It's just facts, and you were part of it. He rubbed his face with both hands like he wanted to disappear. You're really going through with this? It's already done. I stood up and walked out before he could answer. The invitation came late Thursday. Emergency leadership breakfast. Friday, 7:30 a.m. South Conference Room. Same room where they held the awards banquet. Same room where I sat behind a paper plate with my name scribbled in Sharpie. I arrived at 7:25 with a black binder under my arm and a flash drive in my coat pocket. No laptop, no entourage. Just calm, clean intent. The table was full. CEO, CFO, compliance head, a few legal faces, and 3 board members. Elena nodded once when I entered. The others stayed stiff. The CEO stood. Nicole, before we begin? Let's not, I said, pulling out the chair across from him. He cleared his throat. If there's been confusion about internal audit procedures, there hasn't. What there has been is cost manipulation, vendor laundering, falsified customs entries, and coordinated underreporting of freight duties. I set the binder on the table and flipped it open. Page 1, the inflated Singapore-Rotterdam manifests. Page 2, the Slack thread calling it vegetables under mashed potatoes. Page 3, the dual billing from Clearfleet. The CFO shifted in her seat. Legal started flipping through their copies. The CEO folded his hands like a priest waiting out a confession. Page 12, I said, turning it for him. That's where the bonus structures start. You'll see how inflated cost centers padded quarterly savings, which fed directly into executive performance triggers. He didn't move. Page 24 outlines the third-party brokers used to clean the paperwork trail. One of them is owned by your cousin-in-law. Still want to pretend you didn't know? A ripple went through the room. Legal perked up. Elena didn't blink. Page 38, I continued. Internal PR draft. Strategy for when this hits the press. I paused, looked at Eric, hunched at the far end, sweating through his collar. Eric Macaulay, labeled as the voice of reform. The plan was to use him as a cleanup narrative while the rest of you ducked out the back. The CEO finally spoke. We can handle this internally. There's no need to make this a public. It's already public. I pulled the flash drive from my coat and placed it in front of him. That's a copy of everything you just saw. The original report was submitted to Federal Legal Counsel 4 days ago. This morning, I gave Freight Channel the green light to release the overview summary. Silence, pure and clean. I turned to Elena. Your board has 72 hours to act. Fire your CEO, suspend all executive bonuses pending investigation, and initiate a third-party audit, real one this time. Or I go straight to the media with phase 2. The CEO leaned forward. You're bluffing. Check Bloomberg in 10 minutes. He leaned back. I pulled a single sheet from the back of my binder and slid it across the table. My formal resignation. Nicole? This isn't a negotiation. It's a notice. I stood, closed the binder, and looked straight at Eric. I warned you. Then I walked out of the room without waiting for permission. 3 weeks later, I was standing in line at a bagel shop when my phone lit up. Breaking. Viridian CEO resigns amid compliance scandal. Whistleblower report confirmed. I didn't even open the article. I already knew what it said. Executive misconduct, misreported duties, board-initiated audit, quiet settlement pending. No criminal charges. Yet. I texted Elena one word. Clock's ticking. She replied with a thumbs up. By the end of that same day, I had 2 recruiter voicemails and 3 emails from advisory firms. One came with a subject line that just said, "Let's talk." Full access, no politics. That one was serious. National logistics advisory firm. Triple the budget I had at R&M, twice the autonomy, and a direct line to the CFO. I signed by Friday. They wanted me sharp and loud. They wanted someone who could smell rot before it spread. Eric didn't call. He didn't email. I heard through someone at Viridian that he kept his job, for now. They shuffled him to a strategic development title with no real pull. No projects, no team. Just a desk with a window and no assignments, no headlines, no thank you. Just disappeared sideways. Danny and I were having dinner the night the follow-up article hit. Full-page piece about ethics in supply chain operations. My name wasn't in it, but the quote about third-party freight laundering came straight from my report. She leaned across the table. So, was it worth it? I sipped my wine. It wasn't revenge. She raised a brow. No? I shook my head. It was recognition. She smirked. Yeah, that's the better currency anyway. I nodded, half smiling. Let them laugh. I built a better table.